Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 3. All episodes are available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com or subscribe on YouTube at My Week in Baseball and click the like button too. As always, a couple of thank yous. First, to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logo created especially for this show and website. To view more, visit rosepetalstudios.com. And second, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, today we've got the Tigers extension with rookie Colt Keith, a review of the book, Why We Love Baseball, the Oakland A's and the Oakland B's, Ray Boone from 1950s Detroit, and a crazy run-scoring scheme without a single ball in play. Of course, we'll also have a timely Blimerick, our baseball limerick, and our blast from the past featuring the 51 New York Giants along the way. So let's get right to it. Today's trivia question is an easy one. It's a simple numbers game for you. What are the most runs ever scored without a single ball in play to tie a game in the ninth inning? Hint, it happened not long ago, just last year, the 2023 season. The most ever runs scored without a ball in play. We'll have the answer for you later in the show. So the Detroit Tigers signed an extension with Colt Keith. Colt Keith has never played a game in the major leagues. This is a 6-year deal worth a little bit over $28.5 million, and it includes a 3-year club option to bring it up to 9 years and around $82 million. So that would be if Colt Keith played the full 9 seasons and the Tigers picked up the option in those later years, that would be about $9 million a year, $9.1 million a year. And if they don't pick up the options, if it just ends up being a 6-year deal only, it's approximately $5 million a year, just a little less over those 6 years. So you know what? This is really a very low risk deal for the Tigers for a guy that they expect to be a cornerstone of their future team. It works out well for Colt Keith as well, because if he gets hurt or if he doesn't play up to expectations, he still gets the money guaranteed. And neither side has to go through arbitration during any of that time. And those 6 years leading up to free agency are all part of the deal. So the Tigers don't have to be concerned about that, and neither does Colt Keith. So why is this a good deal? Well, Keith is only 22 years old, and he's a career 300 hitter in the minors. He also has a career 380 on-base percentage and over a 500 slugging percentage in the minor, which are really terrific numbers. So last year in 2003, between AA Erie and AAA Toledo, Colt Keith hit .306 with 38 doubles, 27 home runs, 101 runs batted in, and a .932 on-base plus slugging, which is absolutely fabulous. So he's a terrific hitter. I'm certain the Tigers expect that he will do well offensively in the majors. There has been some doubt about his defense and where he'll end up playing. He has played third. He has played second. The Tigers seem to think that they're targeting second base for him. He's essentially being handed the second base job going to spring training. I know they say they're not doing that, but there's really not a good alternative. So he should be the Tigers' second baseman to open the season, barring injury. Now, the Tigers could potentially use him at third. They certainly do have a hole there as well at third base. But I think the Tigers and most fans would agree there are more options available. Verlin can play third. There are quite a few guys who could potentially play third at least part of the time. And I think they feel like they have more options at third base, perhaps, than they do at second. They also like that playing at second does not require the long throw to first. It doesn't require the same arm strength. So it seems like it's probably a better fit to bring Colt Keith in at second base. So this contract gets through those first 6 years, including arbitration, plus the first 3 years of free agency, which would take Colt Keith to age 30 with the club. So I'm hopeful that that all works out. One last stat, though. This guy, Colt Keith, really controls the strike zone. And this is something that the Tigers' upper management, Scott Harris, has said he wants to do. These are the kinds of players he's focused on. And he does that by having a very high walk rate between 11 and 12%, which is very high. To me, anyway, 10% and higher is very good. And he has an extremely low strikeout rate, right around 19%, at least in his games with AAA. So, you know, if you're below 20%, I mean, a lot of guys are 25%. There are even some guys who kind of hang around maybe closer to 30, though they're definitely borderline. But under 20% strikeout rate, over 10% walk rate, and 300 hitters so far in the minors. So congratulations both to Colt Keith and to the Detroit Tigers for this terrific contract going into the future. Next up, Why We Love Baseball. Well, this is a book written recently, just copyrighted in 2023, last year, by author Joe Posnanski. And it says in the subtitle, it's a history of baseball in 50 moments. And basically it is. You might choose other moments. Some of them are ones that you will recognize. Some of them are ones that are really quite obscure. In some cases involve minor leaguers or other players that you're not very familiar with, but the stories are terrific. And Posnanski has a great way of taking important things in the game and delving into the background. And sometimes he'll bring up a topic and then he actually goes at it from a different angle. So it's not sort of the storyline that you thought you knew. And I like that about it a lot. I'll just mention a few of my favorite items that are in the book. There is a section where Vin Scully calls Sandy Koufax's perfect game in September of 1965. And the author, Posnanski, puts in little comments here and there as the broadcast goes on. But really, Vin Scully's call of the game is terrific. And this particular chapter is really about the ninth inning. And it talks through everything that Scully says as he relays the game. But the thing that I like about it, and the little bit that I'm going to quote for you here, is the way Vin Scully begins. And this is a quote from Vin Scully about Koufax's perfect game at the very beginning. When he stepped to the mound that day, the crowd applauded. They did not cheer. There was no yelling, no whooping, no hollering. It was pure applause. It was the sort of appreciation you would hear for the conductor of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. What a terrific quote. Thank you, Vin Scully. Another item that I like in this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it later in the show, the famous call in 1951 when Bobby Thompson hits the home run, and the call is, the Giants won the pennant, the Giants won the pennant, the Giants won the pennant. This is one you very likely remember. It's a classic baseball call from a radio broadcast. Curiously, Ernie Harwell, future Detroit Tigers broadcaster, is broadcasting the game on television that day, but the famous call is the call that's on the radio. So a little bit more about that later, but that is also in the book. Another item I like is in 1975. It's the World Series of the Boston Red Sox versus the Cincinnati Reds, probably one of the greatest memories in Red Sox history. This is when Carl Yastrzemski waves the ball fair. He hits a home run off Cincinnati pitcher Pat Darcy, who by that time is completely wiped out. It's the bottom of the 12th inning. The game is tied at 6-6. And Johnny Bench even famously says that Darcy has nothing left in the warm-ups for that inning. So he's had it. It's a long game. But the real story with this one is the camera person. And this is the angle that I like, something that I've never heard before. You know the famous scene. Darcy tosses the pitch. Yastrzemski swings and pulls it down the left field line. And the ball looks like it might go foul. And Yastrzemski stands there waving, jumping up and down, waving his arms, trying to make the ball go fair. The ball ends up hitting the foul pole, which of course is a home run. And it's Bedlam in Boston. Now, you'd think that game won the series. It doesn't. It actually is game 6 of the series. It sends the series to a game 7. The Reds eventually win. But that's like the classic moment. The classic moment is winning the game in game 6. But the story behind the story is how that even gets on camera. Yastrzemski waving the ball fair. How did they get that? The cameraman was not supposed to be taking that picture. The camera person was supposed to be following the flight of the ball. That's what the camera people do. Well, in this particular case, the camera person was stationed inside the scoreboard in left field, filming the game. And as Yaz took his swing, there was a rodent inside the scoreboard running at the camera person. The camera person was distracted and loses track of the ball. And the only thing they can do is train the camera directly on Yastrzemski. And that is why, because of a rodent in the back room, that is why we have that famous camera shot. Anyway, that to me was a terrific moment in the book. And again, this is the book, Why We Love Baseball by Joe Posnanski. But my favorite thing about the whole book is not necessarily any single story that you'll read in the book, because some of them you'll know and some of them you won't know. And some of you think that's great. And some of you might go a little bit, that's okay. But what my favorite thing about it is that it gets you thinking about special baseball moments in your own life. And it's a good way to connect with other people about their special moments as well. So one of those moments, in talking with my own dad about his memories from the 1950s Detroit Tigers, was their seeming animosity toward their third baseman. His memory is that every time this particular player came to the plate, he would be greeted by the home crowd with the surprising chant of "Boo, boo, boo." Now, did everyone despise the home team's own third baseman? The answer, of course, is no. They were actually chanting the player's name, Boone, 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 as in Ray Boone. And in fact, the Boone family has an extensive baseball tradition. Ray Boone was the father to catcher Bob Boone, who himself was father to second baseman Brett Boone and utility player Aaron Boone, all of whom played in Major League Baseball. And if you're keeping track, that means that Ray Boone was both the father and grandfather to generations of ball players. So let's take a little closer look at Ray Boone. So Ray Boone started out as a shortstop, surprisingly, with the then Cleveland Indians, now Cleveland Guardians. And in 1953, he got off to a slow start with Cleveland and was traded to Detroit early in 1953. And he went on to be terrific that year for Detroit in over 100 games for the Tigers. And in 53, 54, 55, 56, Ray Boone really was quite good, especially offensively. In those years for Detroit, he hit 22, 20, 20, and 25 home runs. In 1955, he led the league in runs batted in with 116. And during those years, he had batting averages of 312, 295, 284, and 308. He made the All-Star team twice during that time and was in the top 20 in MVP voting in 1955. His OPS plus, which is how much better or worse he was than league average during those same years. So beginning in 1953, and this is the portion of the year that he played with Detroit, 57% above average, 31%, 22%, and 41% above league average. Those are really fabulous offensive numbers. And he primarily did play third base for Detroit. That seems to be a change. He primarily played shortstop for Cleveland. And throughout his year, he did play more third than short, but not by as much as I would have thought. His defensive statistics are more what I would call middling, because when I look at them over his 13-year career, during that time, his total defensive runs saved at third base is -9, which really isn't that bad over the course of that many seasons. It's a little below average, but in his peak year, which was probably 1954, he was actually better than average. 3 defensive runs saved better than average, according to the more advanced stats in 1954. And his range was a tad below league average, getting to 3.39 balls per game versus the league average 3.46. It's not a whole lot different, but I would say he was more of a probably middling defender, but a great offensive player. And that memory of the boo, 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 really Boone, 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 that the fans are calling as he steps up to plate is really fun. It's those kind of things that stand out for you when you go to the games, those kinds of things that stick in your head years later. And to me, again, the funnest part of reading this book is getting your own self to think about this and to talk to people about what their special moments were. So I highly recommend this book. It's called Why We Love Baseball by Joe Posnanski. Give it a read. I think you will really enjoy it. Next up, something to honk about. So, Oakland. How could it be Oakland? This might be a topic that will go on and on. It may be running its course, but this is about both the Oakland A's and a team you may never have heard of, the Oakland Bees. So let me give you a little bit here. The Oakland A's recently blocked a minor league game that was supposed to be played by the expansion club Oakland Ballers, who are also known as the Oakland Bees, that they had scheduled to play in the Oakland Coliseum this year, 2024, in June, a day that the A's had previously said they did not need the stadium. And maybe couldn't they use a little rent money from the stadium as well? It is a minor league team. Anyway, the Ballers, the Oakland Bees, are part of the Pioneer League. It is an independent league which has existed in some form since 1939, if you rely on Wikipedia, or according to the team site, since 1929, in various organizations with various teams from across the West. But these Oakland Bees are a brand new team, brand new to the league this year, 2024. And this is now a 12-team league with teams all across the Rockies and throughout the West. So for its part, though, the Ballers handled this graciously and have announced plans to activate an historic Oakland ballpark for the 2024 season, Raimondi Park in West Oakland, which was known for helping to produce Frank Robinson and Curt Flood. So I think it's terrific. They're going to be in the area. They're going to pick up that flag with the A's likely moving. The Oakland Ballers, the Oakland Bees are going to pick up that flag, and there will be a fun to watch independent minor league team in their place. Of course, we also have 2 mayors who have weighed in on the situation, two politicians, the mayor of Las Vegas and the mayor of Oakland. So recently, the mayor of Las Vegas was surprisingly candid and truthful and said that they think the stadium plan that the Oakland A's have does not make sense. And quote, I personally, this is from the mayor of Las Vegas, I personally think the A's have got to figure out a way to stay in Oakland and make their dream come true. Now, granted, the stadium's actually outside of the city of Las Vegas. And so the mayor of Las Vegas did not have direct influence. One of the sites they were considering was in Vegas. This one is just outside of town, so it's actually in the county. But the Las Vegas mayor did walk back her comments the following day, saying she would gladly welcome the A's into Las Vegas, but just really telling. To me, when I read that, it's like, we've got a lot of teams here. We've got a lot to do. This is Las Vegas. There's no lack of things going on. The A's are just another distraction. They're just another thing. They're another entertainment. Woo-woo. The Oakland mayor also had a quote about this situation. And this is, according to the mayor of Oakland, quote, we're seeing that he has the same issues in going to Las Vegas. And what the mayor means by that is that Vegas now is realizing how difficult it is to work with the A's owner, John Fisher, to actually build a ballpark. You can say that you're going to, or you've got some kind of a lease or an option on the land, but it hasn't happened yet. And Major League Baseball is getting frustrated that there's no groundbreaking, there's nothing imminently happening to get a stadium built. So the A's might end up playing in Sacramento this next year. Part of the deal with that, though, is if they leave the Bay Area, Sacramento kind of makes sense, still being a California team. But leaving the Bay Area, they would give up their television and broadcast rights to the tune of something like $67 million a year. They'd have to accept a lesser deal, some other deal, to be in Sacramento because the contract they've signed does not include that city. And if they were to go elsewhere, if they were to play in, say, Utah, which is a possibility, there's no deal there at all. There's no money on the table there. And similarly, if they happen to go to Las Vegas and play in the minor league stadium there, they're also in the situation of having to renegotiate these financial contracts for broadcast rights. So really the smartest thing for them to do is to stay in Oakland. We know they're going to be there this year. They have this year left on their lease, but going into 2025 and 2026, we don't know. And at this point, there's no clear timeline on when a stadium could actually exist in Las Vegas. There's some other quotes I love about this as I continue to honk about this topic. So this was from last fall, and this was a quote from The Athletic. Apparently, the president of the A's, Dave Cavell, said, quote, Bally's is the operating entity that's going to build the casino around us on the site, end quote. So that to me means, wow, pretty clearly, casino around the site. So then one of the fans from Oakland, Mike Davey, says, quote, it's going to be a baseball stadium-themed casino. It's not going to be a ballpark. I think that's an interesting quote, that they're really part of the reason for being in Las Vegas could be to include the gambling and really make this facility into sort of a baseball-like, baseball-themed casino. Certainly, you're going to have people there who aren't gambling age, so there's got to be some arrangements for that, but it sounds like it's really going to focus a lot on that and maybe out-of-town betting and maybe out-of-towners rooting for their team. I don't know, maybe the A's will just always be bad, and the idea is you'll go there to watch your team win. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. It's not promising right now. I feel sorry for the people in Oakland. The owner of the A's, Fisher, also has told people that he's been trying to find a new stadium location in the Bay Area for 18 years. And this is a really out of touch quote from him. Quote, "It's been a lot worse for me than it's been for you." Really? You're the uber wealthy owner of a professional baseball franchise, and it's been worse for you than it has been for the fans. That seems out of touch. You might think that, but that sure isn't the right thing to say. So anyway, that's my rant for today about the Oakland A's and the Oakland B's and just the team in general and the situation with the stadium and whether they move or don't. Next up, our blast from the past. And this time, we're going to go back as a tribute to that 1951 New York Giants, to that famous Bobby Thompson home run call. And we're going to delve back into it a little bit. One thing is that team played 157 games back at the time when the season was typically 154 games. The extra 3 games were part of a special playoff with the Dodgers to determine who would go to the World Series. There is something that's controversial about that, and that's one of the things that's mentioned in Joe Posnanski's book. And that controversy is around something that will sound familiar to you, and it's stealing signs. According to the book, the Giants were behind by a fair amount. They make up a lot of ground, kind of a miracle type run toward the end of the season to catch the Dodgers. There is a distinct point, though, where Leo DeRocher, the manager of the Giants, tells them how they're going to proceed and how they're going to attempt to win more games. And that is, they position one of their coaches in center field behind the scoreboard with a telescope, and he collects the signs from the opposing team's catcher, relays them to the bullpen, and the bullpen, through a series of signals, lets the batter know what pitch is coming. Surprisingly, according to the book anyway, this doesn't help the team batting average, and as a whole, the Giants actually hit better before the sign stealing scheme than they did afterwards. But one player in particular has a tremendous second portion of the season, and that is Bobby Thompson. How much of that was really affected by knowing pitches? If he did know pitches, we'll never know, but it does add an interesting bit of intrigue to the story. So let's take a quick look at those 51 Giants. The 1951 Giants had a few names that you might remember. Eddie Stanky at second base, Al Dark at shortstop, Monty Irvin in the outfield, and a rookie, Willie Mays in the outfield. Willie Mays hit 20 home runs that rookie year, batted .274, and had he was 20% above league average offensively that year. Bobby Thompson, though, had an absolutely terrific year. This was his age 27 season. And curiously, he's listed as a utility player in the reference materials. And this is because he played third, left, center, and right. He played all over the field, all over the outfield, plus third base, primarily at third, but a fair number of games in the outfield. And he was terrific that year. In 148 games, he had 32 home runs, batted .293. He walked more than he struck out, 73 walks, and 385 on base percentage. That's great. And an OPS of 947, 50%, by far better than almost anybody else on the team. Monty Irvin's the only one who comes close. He's 47% above league average. But Bobby Thompson had an absolutely terrific year that year. One other thing of note, if you recall, a few episodes back, I did review a book that talks specifically about Artie Wilson and what a great player he is in the Negro Leagues and in the Pacific Coast League. Artie Wilson is on this 1951 New York Giants team just briefly. He is on the team for 19 games. He doesn't get much of a chance. He only bats 182 in that limited time. He isn't really a starter. But as you'll recall, he gets sent down so Willie Mays can come up because of the unspoken quota that you can only have so many players of color on your team at a single time. Anyway, another one of those things, a blast from the past that comes to mind when reading the book, Why We Love Baseball. And now our Blimerick, our baseball limerick. And this time it is a tribute to those 1951 Giants and that famous radio call. So here we go. Although the Yankees win it all, in 51, we remember the call. The Giants win the pennant. The Giants win the pennant as Bobby Thompson clobbers the ball. And finally, the answer to today's trivia question. The question is, how many runs scored to tie a game in the ninth inning without a batted ball being put in play? Well, it is a single-digit number. There aren't too many numbers you can guess from. The answer happens to be 3. And this happened last summer on Friday, August 11 of 2023. And this is the Tampa Bay Rays, who would blow a 3-run lead before coming back against Cleveland's Guardians in what would be a wild 9-8 victory. But it's those 3 runs that scored without the benefit of a hit ball that makes this game noteworthy. And I have to give credit for this information to a column written by The Athletic, by Levi Weaver and Jason Stark last summer. They have a column called Weird and Wild, and credit to researcher Katie Sharp. And what a great last name for someone who is in the baseball stats field. I love that, Sharp. What could be better than that? But credit also to researcher Katie Sharp for looking into where this fell in the record books. But this is the sequence, and this is just what's kind of interesting about that play. So how do the Guardians come back and tie the game, even though they eventually lose? How do they go on and tie this game with 3 runs in the ninth inning? Well, the first batter of the inning gets a walk. The second batter of the inning gets a walk. The third batter is hit by a pitch. So now the bases are loaded. Now there's a strikeout. So there's actually 1 out. And that is followed by a wild pitch. So that's 1 run in. Nobody's hit a ball fair yet. There's then another strikeout. So now there's 2 outs. There's another wild pitch. That scores a 2nd run. Still nobody's hit a ball fair. That is then followed by a walk to put runners back on base again, and yet another wild pitch. And that scores the 3rd run of the game. So there end up being how many walks? Let's see if I can even count them. 1 walk, 2 walks, 3 walks, and 3 wild pitches, plus a hit by pitch. So what a crazy inning. It had never been done before to come back and tie a game in the ninth inning. Oh, and as a side note, in that game, Tampa Bay's third baseman, Isaac Paredes, hits a 2-run home run in the game. Now, he could have been Detroit's third baseman, and that may be a future topic. And so that's all for today, my friends. Join us next time because, honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.